Hello, everybody. Welcome to this final session of the Frame by Frame course. You're all very welcome. Today's session will be a little bit different to how it's worked previously in that we won't have a formal questions and answers session. So please don't put questions into the Q&A box in the hope that you'll get an answer today, because we won't be doing that. But what Mark is going to do is to address some of the questions that have come up in previous sessions and review very much what we've been looking at and exploring over these past weeks, which we were just talking about before this session. We started this particular course, the Frame by Frame course, on May the 12th, and we've been together for all that time. So it's a very lovely moment to be handing over to Mark, who's going to share with you reflections and this final session with us all tonight. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Claire. So let's start by sitting for a few moments. So coming to sit, and of course, if you prefer to stand or to lie down, that's also fine. And spending a few moments now arriving here. Noticing your body in whatever posture you have chosen. Perhaps choosing an anchor, feet on the floor, or the sense of contact with what's supporting you if you're lying or sitting. Hands on your lap. Or the breath. If you prefer an anchor outside the body, then sounds, if you choose. And whatever anchor you choose, now, seeing if it's possible to be open moment by moment to the sensations from your chosen anchor, whatever they are. Moving in close. Then at a certain point, if you choose, expanding your attention to take in the whole body. And as best you can, allowing the whole body to be just as you find it, however it is. bringing this sense of the spaciousness of the body and the spaciousness of the mind to the next few moments of your day. Beginning to move now and letting your eyes open if they've been closed. These 8 weeks have given us a taste of a new course that's been developed for those who want to explore mindfulness more deeply. Week by week, we've been interweaving mindfulness practices with psychological science, an interweaving that may have offered fresh insights into the way our minds work and how to navigate the difficulties we face. So, as we come to the end of our time together, I want to do 3 things today. First, to summarize some of the main themes we've been exploring and address some of your questions that have emerged. Second, to give you a chance to review what you've been experiencing over these past weeks. And then third and finally, to address the issues you've been raising about how this course fits with other mindfulness courses and what happens next. So first then, a summary. Both ancient and modern teachings reveal that every waking moment, our understanding of the world is affected by predicting what actions we need to take, coloured by what is called feeling tone. That is the moment-by-moment readout of whether anything that comes into contact with mind or body feels pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. Depending on where on the spectrum any event in mind or body falls, from highly pleasant to highly unpleasant, the direction of our action and its urgency is determined. Based on this moment-by-moment readout, the body elegantly allocates its resources as it gears up for real or imagined action. This can prepare us well for action, but can also put us at risk of becoming exhausted without our realizing it. Ancient traditions saw feeling tone, they called it Vedana, as an important aspect of mindfulness practice, one of the 4 very foundations or main ways of establishing mindful awareness. And the point here is this: if Vedana or feeling tone is not seen clearly, it, as we say in English, presses our buttons. Left to itself, it automatically creates a pulse of reactivity. This reactivity pulse might include resistance against what we don't like, or pursuit of what we do like, or sometimes, as we've discovered, a dampening of the positive to avoid disappointment. Feeling tone is so easily missed, yet it is the very tipping point for reactivity that can do so much damage to ourselves and our relationships. And most of us know how the next bit of the story goes. The automatic reactivity can set in motion a whole cascade of thoughts, images, and emotions, like a photo burst, we called it, a fast succession of camera images, but one that slides easily from real-world data, which can be bad enough, heaven knows, to fabrication, which is even worse, with the body making itself ready for action for the worst imaginings of the photo burst sequence. And all the while in this course, we've been reminding ourselves that we can't do anything about the Vedana, the feeling tone. But by slowing things down and looking frame by frame, bringing it into the light of awareness, we can dissolve the link between the feeling tone and the reactivity pulse that would have followed it. And what's more, if the reactivity has already created a cascade and your mind has spent the last minutes or even hours dwelling on something, even right then and there, you can become aware of the tonality either of the most recent thought or emotion or of the whole thought stream. It's never too late, because even the cascade has its own feeling tone, which is generating its own ongoing automatic reactivity pulses. And it's because our worst imaginings feel completely true that feeling tone can be so liberating if we see it, and why it remains one of the cornerstones of mindfulness. Because if at this worst point, we see even a momentary space between feeling tone and reaction, then you've already made a little shift from the driven doing mode in which you're going round and round the same circles, urgently trying to find a solution, to the being mode where you stand back a little and discover a sliver of freedom. In the being mode, you see that your thoughts, emotions, and imagined actions are really mental events colored by the feeling tone. There's a sense of having just a little more space and a little more kindness and self-care in the midst of everything you're going through. The difficult situation may still be present, but you feel more freedom. And mindfulness and awareness can be introduced at any stage in this process. And that's why it's been said that becoming aware of the feeling tone both reveals and unlocks the deepest patterns of our conditioning. And week by week, your comments and reflections have shown that this is not just a rumor from another age. It's true for you right now. Of course, even if we do notice changes, we'll still have some questions. So let's look at some of those now. Someone said they found it confusing to distinguish between the brain and the gut. They asked, what is our instinct and what can we trust? Well, that's a huge question. And the answer is that we don't always know what we can trust. We have to explore moment by moment what it feels right to trust now, act as wisely as we can, then see the fruits of our actions. This is where reflection is helpful, even journaling, if you like. It helps remind you of your intentions and then what your actual experience was. But this raises another question. Someone else asked, but how does journaling and reflection fit in with present moment awareness? Well, yes, I agree it can seem as if reflection or journaling is taking you away from the present moment. But actually, it's a process of intentionally making space now to see clearly what has been happening. More broadly, it's good to remind ourselves that mindfulness does not actually mean living in the present moment, if this means excluding thoughts or memories or plans. We need to think. We need to remember the past. We need to make plans for the future. The challenge is to remember knowing we are remembering, and to plan knowing we are planning. The problem is not mental time travel itself, but being time travelers without realizing we are traveling. And so, for example, in the week 7 end of day reflection, you deliberately brought to mind what had happened in the last 24 hours, allowing the events and activities to be cradled in awareness so that you might discern what you had appreciated most and what you appreciated least. The next step was, if you chose, to reflect on any adjustments you'd like to make in the next few days in the light of this reflection. So the intention in that practice was to remember, fully aware that you're remembering, then make a plan, fully aware that you're planning. The full awareness is a marker of present moment attention, even when what is being assembled in the mind and held here is a memory from the past or a plan for the future. You also practiced bringing something you were procrastinating about into the field of awareness as well. And someone asked, how is this practice, procrastination, related to the end of day practice? Well, it's your choice. You may do them separately, or you may find that they come together naturally, especially if one of the things you find you appreciated least during the day, the end of day practice, was seeing an unfinished task coming up. But however you choose to practice this, you have the chance to let what unfinished or depleting to remain on the workbench of the mind for a little longer as you explore its feeling tone without pressure or expectations, but with kindness to yourself. So let's turn now to reviewing what you've been experiencing over these past weeks. We'll start with a breathing space, leading to a brief reflection. So taking up a posture, making a change in your posture now for breathing space, standing if you wish, lying if you wish, or sitting here, making a deliberate change in your posture as we take a breathing space. The first step of the breathing space to acknowledge what's going on in mind and body right now. And then letting whatever's coming up for you fade into the background if that's possible. And in the second step, coming to your chosen anchor. Some place where you can ground your attention for these few moments. And then step 3, broadening your attention to take in the whole body from head to toe, the surface of the skin and right inside the body. A sense of coming home to the body. And as you sit here, allowing this question to drop into your mind. What did I hope for in this course? Allowing it to drop like a pebble down a well, until the pebble settles down at the bottom of the well, allowing it to lie here. What did I hope for in this course? And then, what have been my discoveries? Perhaps delights, perhaps difficulties, but what have you discovered? Allow that question to drop and see what comes, what answers come. Thank you. Allowing your eyes to open if they've been closed. And we'll open the chat for a couple of minutes, and feel free to put in the chat any word or phrase that captures a discovery, a delight or a difficulty, something that you've learned that's important to you. So feel free to do that now. So a new depth of practice, or sometimes self-sabotage, some compassion, or no action needed right now. In one case, somebody discovered the inner critic. And somebody said it's okay not to like my experience. Somebody else talking about no action needed now. Somebody mentioned a powerful new method of gentleness, different levels, depths, that change is possible, that practice doesn't need to be a whole hour, and practical things. And the difficulties are shared by others as well. Isn't that interesting? We are sometimes miles apart and yet a sense of having shared difficulties. And putting distance between the feeling, tone, and the emotion. That kindness is vitally important, absolutely. Do you remember we talked about the three things that all mindfulness teaches: the stability, the clear seeing, and kindness. And it's like a tripod, you know, if you have one leg missing from the tripod, the whole thing falls over. So stability, clear seeing, kindness, all are needed. Somebody says their desires and strong emotions are actually not that fulfilling. Peace feels better. That's an amazing discovery, an amazing discovery. And something knowing in depth about the mind, very nourishing tip of the iceberg, that idea that the mind is, yeah, just like an iceberg. And somebody else mentioned the courtroom of the mind. I think that's a very interesting way to see it. The judge that never finds you innocent. The judge that is always the hanging judge, and how unfair that is. You know, who on earth is this judge that's so qualified to judge us? Somebody talked about being honest with myself and feeling and how to let go, and appreciation as a delight. And somebody says that ME has improved, the feelings really enlightening. And depletion is also okay. I think that's a really significant discovery, that we can hold all the stuff that comes up. I think I alluded earlier on in the weeks to John Kabat-Zinn's observation that whatever comes up is your curriculum for right now. So sometimes when we're restless and we try to practice, we say, oh, if only this restlessness would go away, then I could meditate. And what John is reminding us is, no, restless is your practice for that day. We've tried to express that by talking about what's the gymnasium equipment: restlessness, oh, tiredness, depletion. This is what is here right now. So we surround that with kind, mindful awareness, looking deeply into its heart. Somebody said, we're only human. Greater understanding of reactivity. I think that's so. And the sense that our minds are always working for us, running in the background like other organs. Absolutely. We alluded to, you know, the liver going on all the time, the lungs going on all the time, and the mind, that default mode network we talked about, going on all the time in the background, which we can be aware of in the fringes of consciousness sometimes. And we can be aware of how it gets busy. Do you remember we talked about the troops readying themselves for action, and how when we say no action needed, for example, if we feel any release there, what does it say? It says that something must have been going on that we didn't realize, something in the background. And somebody mentioned the experience of a worldwide network of people who want to understand the higher functions of the mind and put these into action in their lives. Absolutely. It's, I think Alison reminded us last week, something like over 80 countries on these few hours that we've had together. Somebody says, my default is now much calmer. It's a real achievement. That's lovely. And the underlying purring, the low level buzz, always there. And the third, that's probably feeling tones. Absolutely. That we can become aware, but we don't have to be aware all the time. We can just drop into awareness from time to time. Check it out. What's going on right now? What's its feeling tone? We just add that extra sense of what's going on. What's its feeling tone? And that's enough, because actually, if we need to, we can then go on to say, it's unpleasant. If you want to say it's okay not to like it, it's natural not to like it, that's fine, but you don't have to. In the traditions, just the acknowledgement, the sense of seeing it clearly. And there's a sense in which the phrases we've added to the seeing are only there to help us stay a little while so we can see it clearly. So that's, I think, a useful thing to know. So we'll close the chat in a few seconds. And somebody mentioned no goal, only intention, allowing things to be as they are. Absolutely. It's so, we can say allowing things to be, can't we? And it can be just words, but what we've been doing is actually practicing. That mindfulness is not just a good idea, it's actually a practice, because ideas don't last very long, actually. I mean, you can go into a shop and buy posters that will tell you to be mindful, to be in the present, and you can put it on the wall, but does it make a difference? Maybe it does, but often it doesn't. What we've been doing is practicing, and that's the good thing. So we'll close the chat now. Thank you very much for that. We'll open it again a little later for some other purpose. So we began this course by talking about a number of things that happen when we're stuck in driven mode and driven to exhaustion. We listed a few of them. We become preoccupied, judgmental, unaware, off balance, reactive, fearful, and joyless. And we don't feel that this is good for us. We don't like feeling this. Like the couple who moved to their first house and found a large rock when clearing their new garden, our instant reaction is to get rid of it. You may recall that the couple found it was part of the rock on which the house was built and decided they were going to have to make a rock garden around it. You have been exploring how, by bringing mindfulness of feeling tone to light, you can help make a garden around all those things in your life that you don't much like. Often, they're things that have been knocked out of shape by what's happened to you and then distorted again by the way the driven mode reacts and tells you you should be better than this. And you've mentioned in that list we've just looked at many delights and some difficulties. So I want to take an opportunity now to sit and touch in briefly with the practices from the past weeks, so that for one last time together, we can see how, despite the bad things you may say about yourself, you already have all you need. So let's sit or lie or stand, and we'll be practicing for about 15 minutes. So settling in either sitting or standing or lying down if you prefer, letting your eyes close if that feels comfortable. Finding your ground, if you like, and feeling the whole body, standing, sitting, lying here. So, those weeks ago, we started by noticing we often get preoccupied, our attention hijacked by concerns. And we learned to offer the mind an anchor, a grounding. And perhaps if we're preoccupied a little now, or we find our attention wandering, practicing this grounding right now, just as we did in week 1. So once again, choosing your anchor, feet, contact with seat, hands or breath or sounds, you choose. Opening to whatever is here as best we can, moment by moment by moment. And if the mind wanders at all, we often get to see another aspect of ourselves that we don't like and gets us stuck: self-judgment. This is another distortion, this time a distortion of being conscientious as we strive to be the best we can be. So if you notice your mind wandering now, as we did in week 2, rather than rushing back to your anchor as if you've done something wrong, pausing, bringing compassion, perhaps even gratitude to the wandering mind. Driven mode also makes us blinkered and unaware. This is when we care so much about one set of problems, we don't see anything else. So we've been deliberately practicing allowing things to slow down, to see if we can sense the feeling tone, these tipping points. So now as you sit or stand or lie here, resting in awareness and noticing what's arising in the mind moment by moment. Maybe sounds, body sensations, thoughts, emotions. And registering their feeling tone, perhaps saying inwardly for each contact with the mind or body, contact pleasant, or contact unpleasant, or contact neutral. From time to time, you may notice you're lost in thoughts. And that's when things can get off balance. When this happens, we're not seeing the feeling tones, yet we are still being pushed and pulled about by them. So as you're sitting or lying now, when you become aware of a contact and its feeling tone, as we practiced in week 4, seeing if it's possible to cultivate equanimity by saying it's okay to like this when a pleasant feeling tone comes. And it's okay not to like this. It's natural not to like this for any unpleasant feeling tones. And when we get completely lost, reactivity is ramped up. when the mind and body gear up to take action that we often don't need. So we end up being constantly on a hair trigger, and wise action gets submerged in the busyness. So if this happens to you in your life or right now, as we learned in week 5, offering yourself the possibility that no action might be needed right now. And as we practice, if things feel too difficult, then feeling free to shift attention into the body and notice the feeling tone of the sensations as they unfold. Or if you choose, returning to your anchor, of course, or opening your eyes and letting go of the guidance altogether for now. This is fine. Looking after yourself. And looking after yourself, being kind to yourself can be quite difficult. So if it helps, bringing to mind a loved one and sense what they would wish for you. Maybe practicing this right now, however things are for you. Bring someone to mind and a sense of being nourished by their kindness as best we can. With this sense of being surrounded by kindness, we may at last see that the way we drive ourselves ends up in joylessness, as the mind suppresses what nourishes us to focus on our commitments. So let's bring to mind what we have appreciated most today or in the last 24 hours. Any small thing we've appreciated most. And then at a certain point, coming back to a sense of sitting, standing, lying here, just as we are, this body, just as it is, already complete, already whole. Thank you. Beginning to move fingers and toes and opening your eyes if they've been closed, and taking in your surroundings again. So once again, we'll open the chat. Perhaps this time you could say which, either add something if you want to add something to what you've already said, or you could say which, if any, meditation has spoken to you most clearly over these weeks. Now, some of you have mentioned already some things, but here's an opportunity to reflect on those again if you wish. What meditation has spoken to you most clearly? So loving kindness, or the body scan, the end of day practice, the befriending and loving kindness, and bringing kindness to the wandering mind. The feeling tone, not liking and being okay with that. No action required right now. The end of day practice, befriending the mind, breathing meditation, finding anchors. So many images for people to work with. Yeah. Loving kindness, the end of day practice, appreciating the complexity of the mind. The feeling tone and no action needed. The choices of anchors, the difficult emotions. Anchors are good. There's a poster for you. Anchors are good. Nobody would really understand it, would they, outside the mindfulness community? But end of, so the end of day practice, no action needed, that relief. Changing anchors, that's right. You can explore this. It makes it playful, doesn't it, to explore the anchors. And the body scan in the morning transforms your day. Stopping and pausing, no action needed. And actually, that's true. You know, we can actually take pauses during the day and just clock in. Is what I've been doing what I intended to be doing? Just taking a pause and asking that can be transformative. The choice of anchors being reflected, using noise as an anchor, absolutely. It's an interesting phenomenon, isn't it? That often sounds, we think to ourselves, if only they would shut up, if only we could be quiet, we could meditate. But when you use sounds as an anchor, you think, come on, where's the sound? I need my sounds as an anchor. So you can change your relationship with sounds. And that can be quite dramatic. Loving kindness, appreciation for the day, acceptance of things not pleasant. That's really helpful, really helpful. Pausing, a revelation. Isn't it interesting how something as simple as that, and again, it's one of the reasons why it's difficult to explain mindfulness to other people, especially if you're over enthusiastic, because they said, oh, not another mindfulness enthusiast, you know, because if they ask what it's about, it's very hard to say anything. So somebody talked about 3-minute breathing space being wonderful during the day, especially when you're getting busy. And exactly after using sounds as an anchor, change your relationship with it. Isn't that interesting? When you actually need sounds as your anchor, they suddenly feel a lot kinder to you. The sense of being already whole and complete. And a couple of people mentioned the 10-finger gratitude exercise. And the difference here is we've done that as a daily practice rather than just mentioning it in passing. And that's really helpful. And using procrastination to learn, absolutely, that as it's a model system, we can say, oh, I'm procrastinating, right, I'll look at that in my meditation, and then you bring it to your meditation and you cradle it in awareness, and without expectations, without it being a method to get you to do it, because guess what, the task would know, you just explore it and see what happens. And people are talking about noticing the constant change of feelings and sensations, and allowing rather than pushing away, and difficulties as gym equipment for the mind, and meditating into current experience rather than seeking a good moment to meditate. Absolutely. This is really important. Otherwise, you know what? You might be waiting a long time if you waited for silence, for everything to be quiet, for your body not to be restless, for everything to be fine. You know, you might not meditate for years. So we meditate with what we've got now, and we cradle what we've got now in awareness. So somebody said they've got the tools for being an inner explorer. That's great. So we're going to close the chat in a couple of seconds, in 10 seconds. And realizing somebody is like an amoeba, you know, that single-celled creature that knows pleasant and unpleasant because it swims towards the nourishment and swims away from toxicity. And every cell in our body is built like that. And as somebody says, the tinnitus is always with us, so why not befriend it? Well, you could try that. Some people get a lot out of that. For other people, it's just too unbearable. So you play with it as you want. So thank you. Thank you for that. So finally, I want to address the issues that you've been raising about how this course fits with other mindfulness courses and what happens next. You've asked a number of questions about the course itself, such as what might be a basic reference for the topic of predicting mind, or a reference for those themes around mind grasping reality like a snapshot camera, and about when we're focused on a project and is suppressing our focus on an interest or hobby. So I've put some references together on a reading list that will be sent to those who are registered for the course. They'll also be in the OMC website, and they'll go on the website mbct.co.uk in due course. I should say the snapshot camera is just my way of thinking about what are called in psychology mental models. They are models that hold an image of what we think is going on, informed by data, the stream of model and the stream of data. And Lisa Feldman Barrett's book, I've put it on the reading list, is really good at explaining the way the mind saves time by predicting what is going to happen. As is another book that will be on the reading list called Surfing Uncertainty by Andy Clark. It's slightly more technical than Lisa Feldman Barrett's book, but it's excellent. His way of expressing the photo burst idea is that perception is controlled hallucination. That's what he calls it, controlled hallucination. And the idea that things get devalued when we suppress them comes from laboratory research. Jane Raymond and her team, when at Bangor, asked participants to do a computer task where they had to focus in the middle of the screen, but they also gave them distractors slightly to the edge, so the participant had to inhibit the distractor in order to do the task. And guess what? The material they used as distractors came to be seen as more negative. Now, if the distractor was near the center, it took more effort to suppress it. And these materials were the ones that became more negative than distractors that were on the edge of the screen, so it didn't need so much effort to push them away. I've put that reference in as well. Someone asked, is this course additional to Peace in a Frantic World or an evolution of it based on experience and research since the original course? Well, in short, it is. It's an evolution of it. And someone else asked a similar question, what has inspired a new course when the old one seems perfect? Well, thank you for that comment. But then they continued, is it designed to fulfill a different need or for a different sort of group? Are there guidelines about which course is more suitable for which people? Well, as we've said, the course you've been following is a taster of a full 8-week course that's been developed out of teachings usually taught on retreat. And the motivation for it was that many people get a lot out of MBCT or MBSR or other courses based on them, such as the Peace in a Frantic World course, but they want to go further, learning new things, new gateways in to sustain and deepen their practice. And this course is one way of going further. There are others. This is one way. It takes something that is referred to implicitly a lot in MBSR and MBCT, feeling tone, and makes it an explicit focus of practice. It's the second foundation of mindfulness, which means it's a possible wellspring of nourishment and insight. But like many springs on a hillside, it's often passed by without noticing, both in retreat settings and mainstream courses. Our aim was to pause longer at the feeling tone spring to allow us, if we choose, to drink deeply of it and so discover a new dimension to our mindfulness practice. In this taster version you've been experiencing over the past weeks, it is slightly different from the full course and there's been more teaching than practice, but that's only because it's a webinar. Somebody asked that. The full 8-week course on which the webinar has been based resembles an MBSR or MBCT course in structure. It's a 2-hour session starting with practice, then moves to inquiry into participants' experiences from the last week's home practices. Then after a short break, it introduces the new theme for the week, a longer meditation and inquiry to explore the theme, followed by giving the new home practice and a closing meditation. The full course has been piloted and evaluated in Oxford, in South Africa, at the Institute of Mindfulness South Africa, in New Zealand, in London, and we hope may be offered by other Oxford teachers in early 2022. And people have asked if there will be a book. Yes, there will be a book. But first, in 2022, we hope to publish an article in an academic journal giving results from the first 8 or 9 courses that have been taught, evidence on the safety and effectiveness of the course, and then a book will follow by myself and Danny Penman, probably in spring 2023. So I want to thank you so much for sending really good reflections and questions each week. I'm very sorry we haven't been able to answer them all as we've been going along. And at the end of a course like this, you may find you're still left with lots of questions. You know, have I understood this? What do I do if this or that happens? Am I doing this right? Such questions very often arise when we're practicing new meditations or hearing about new theories. We can easily become very cognitive. I know I can. And we feel, unless I get this right, things won't change for me. And then we remember what mindfulness teacher Helen Marr said, what if nothing needs to change? What if what's being called for at those moments is to turn on the light of mindful awareness, so we can see more clearly what is happening? And this is because trying to change things, in our practice at least, is such a natural reaction. We don't see that, although it can sometimes work for a while, it can often make things worse in the long run because it reinforces the idea of right and wrong, with the inner critic mostly concluding they're getting it wrong. So, when we find a question coming up, what do I do now? Or how can I do something about this? See if it's possible to take a pause. It's not always possible, but see if it is. Turn on the light to see clearly the feeling tone of the thought and bringing kindness to yourself right then and there. And when we want things to be different, nothing has gone wrong. Of course, we often long that things were different. Rather than imagining how things could be, or even trying to get rid of wanting things to be different, we might allow the longing itself to stay. Welcome the longing itself into the guest house of our practice, bringing curiosity and compassion to the longing itself. Rest in the longing. This course has been about mindfulness frame by frame, but what we have really been learning and relearning is how to live your life frame by frame. Little by little, mindfulness practice allows you, no matter what your history, to realize your full potential, to grow, to experience being alive, to know you are loved and cherished, and to think and feel and act in ways that express your deepest values as your life unfolds day by day and moment by moment. Thank you again for your willingness to commit in this way. Let's sit for a moment and then I'll hand back to Claire. So coming to sit. Thank you. Thank you. I'll hand back now to Claire.
Thank you so much, Mark. I just noticed actually in the chat, somebody said that their resting heart rate was much lower on a Thursday. So for that and everything else that you've shared with us through these amazing few weeks, thank you so much, and we will miss you, I'm sure. A little bit of information for everybody before we close today. We will carry on without Mark, sadly, but we will be carrying on with our Wednesday sessions. Next week, I'll be running a session for you with a theme of community and coming together, which we've definitely felt through these weeks with Mark. So please do join us for that. And then beyond that, normally we'd have a keynote speaker at the beginning of every month. Because it's the summer, we're shaking things up a little bit. And so we won't have a keynote, but we will have Dr. Chris Willard. Some of you may have heard of him. He's going to be talking about how we can support the young people and the young minds around us, especially as we hopefully slowly move out of this sense of global pandemic. So those are the events coming up in the next few weeks. As Mark mentioned, you will get information, lots of information coming through on an email with resources, links. And don't forget, if you miss Mark too much and you miss these sessions too much, you can always revisit them by going to the OMC website. I did put it there in chat, where you can listen to them all over again if you want to, so the learning can continue. But for this last time with Mark, just huge gratitude on behalf of everybody, the OMC and everyone here tonight. A wonderful opportunity to deepen our practice and understanding. Mark, thank you so much. And in time-honored tradition, if you would like now to just open up chat and say goodbye in your own language or in English, up to you entirely. Just any messages as we move out of this session and say goodbye. Thanks very much, everybody.